A very good morning to you all, and thank you for choosing 93.3 KFM. This is VPN, that is Via's People and News. This beautiful Saturday, July the 13th, 2024. I am Judith Atim, your host, and today we are talking about the East African regional political developments and their implications on home affairs, their implications to Uganda as a country. My guests, I have Dr. Sarah Bireete right now with me. My other guests are just making it here shortly. Sarah is a lawyer. She's also the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good morning, listeners out there.
Yes. So before we actually, every time we want to move to a topic, there are always interesting developments here in Uganda, and we can't really jump to East Africa before we address matters at home. Now, if you've read today's papers, Daily Monitor, the Saturday Monitor actually has the front page that says House of Deals. It's basically shining the spotlight on the deals that are taking place in Parliament. We've been talking about this kinds of, unfortunate things or illegal that are happening in the country for the past few weeks that have actually been on the show. But also we want to look at what the Weekend Vision says. It has also quite an interesting front page that says government loses billions of shillings in dubious deal. And two ministers apparently have been cited in the sale of forest land. It is quite... It's shocking, and I was actually just laughing about it. Well, if you've heard of Bajo Forest Reserve in Kayunga, the New Vision did an investigation that says this forest reserve has actually been sold for about 6.4 billion shillings, and two ministers have been cited in this scandal. Here they've actually cited the State Minister for Planning, Amos Golobi, and the State Minister for Agriculture, Fred Chakulaga Bueno. They've been cited in the fraudulent sale of 2 square miles of forest land. That's 1,280 acres to Kira Motors Corporation. I haven't read the whole of it, but it's quite an interesting read. And this is, apart from the figure alone, this is a forest reserve. We are fighting climate change. We're supposed to be conserving the environment. On one hand, NEMA has been evicting people in wetlands. The situation in Dubiji is still very fresh in our minds. We've been all following what's happening. Sarah, just what is your reaction or insight to this?
Well, the corruption issues in Uganda are endless. If I may quote the words of PLO Lumumba, he said that whereas he thought Kenya had so much corruption, when he looked into Uganda issues, he realized that we had a pandemic. How was this?
It sounds funny, but it's actually sad and really unfortunate when you think about it.
I think nobody can compare Uganda's corruption to any other country's
I think maybe
corruption.
Nigeria is also quite bad, but I think very soon we might overtake Nigeria.
Nigeria is bad because of increased transparency. If you look at budget corruption alone, the fraud in budgeting, to the extent that this country budgets for statutory obligations, which include salaries. But every supplementary budget has salaries. That is the first indicator of budget corruption in this country. So where do the salaries in the budget go? And how can an entity, and a counter at that, fail to budget for salaries? So that's what should open the citizens' eyes. I know that we have been a bit... I attribute the conduct of us as Ugandans, being laid back on governance, to the turbulence that we've gone through over the 6 decades of independence. Every government changes by a force of arms, coup after coup, 8 coups, and now people were like, let's do whatever it takes
to survive,
to get a peaceful handover of power. But it is not coming through. So people are wondering, was it worth it to be patient and try to practice democracy? Or the people who were impatient and overthrew regimes, do we miss them now? That's where we've been driven to. You look at the issues in Kenya. The issues that Kenyans are dealing with, the Gen Zs, they are 10 times present here.
Yeah.
They are dealing with the crisis of public debt. Maybe they are higher than us because it's a bigger economy. But dealing with opulence of leaders,
it's the same.
Here is a pandemic. Dealing with the
job opportunities,
taxation, joblessness,
duplication of government agencies.
Of government. Here is a pandemic.
Yes.
So apart from public debt, we should be more angry than Kenyans on all other issues that have arisen from TikTok anger to the streets of the Gen Zs. But Ugandans are like, so long as I can survive, especially the elite, so long as I can survive, I will push through. Let me take care of my family. We don't know that we are going to reach a time where even these elites fail to take care of their families if the situation goes worse.
I think to most people the comfort is when you have an opportunity, you have your small job or your small...
Yeah, you can push through.
You can think there's comfort. Until you lose that opportunity and you're on the fringes, then you'll understand and relate to the struggles that the vast majority of Ugandans actually go through.
So, let me bring the problem closer home. President Museveni is speaking tough in the retreat about corruption. But who is he seated with? Honorable Amos Olugorobi that has sold the forest after being caught in the Mabati saga and facing charges. He's seated with the Amos Olugorobi in his cabinet, speaking tough about bail, about corruption. Should we take him serious? He's also seated on table with Honorable Fred Bwino. The two ministers have sold the forest amidst the climate crisis. So should we take him serious? Can he first do away with his characters? And then he can start speaking tough? Otherwise, it's just a show.
Well, I think my other guests, Edgar Tabaharo, you want to catch your breath a little bit?
Yes. I came very sorry.
Yes.
I take my duties as a citizen seriously.
Yes.
Your road is blocked.
Oh, yes, because of the road works.
Road works.
Sorry.
And
so you had to go through and take a whole detour.
Detour.
Yeah.
So, and I had to run up the stairs
sorry.
to be in time.
I'm going to give you time to catch your breath.
Thank you very much. Take a cup of coffee as well.
Please, while Sarah and I go through this.
Yes, so as I said, President Museveni is speaking tough, but it's empty talk. He's speaking tough to who? He's speaking tough to people that tinker with our budget. 80% of our corruption is embedded in the budget and how it is expended. Who are those people? He's speaking tough with the cabinet about bail. So can he tell his minister to cancel bail and go to Ruzira?
Well, we've seen Ruto disbanding his entire cabinet, and work is still going. The country hasn't fallen apart. It is still going to run. If we actually slashed our cabinet maybe by half, reduced our number of MPs by a certain number, what would be the adverse effect? Because people don't even see.
But what's the value add of cabinet? Do we even still know the ministers other than Moses Ari? Do we know who these ministers are? So, because I'm sure everybody knows the Honorable Moses Ari, but do we know the rest? You know, there was an interesting headline on the Citizen TV of Kenya, and it was saying that Ugandans are shocked that Kenya has a 23 cabinet size, that they are protesting and refusing when they have 82 ministers.
Honestly, I don't even know the number. Because each time you don't know, there's going to be a role created, there's going to be, someone actually added and given a certain position. It is so hard. I remember when we were in primary school, you could actually name
all ministers.
And they were important. All ministries. But now...
Depends on which time you're at primary school.
Well, way back. I'm not a Gen Z. I'm a millennial. So
if it is between 80 and 85, that was easy.
Okay. I wasn't in school at that time.
The earlier...
Like the 90s,
I think it was
early 2000s.
And you could even name the deputy ministers.
Yes, and the districts.
And by the way, we even had an assistant minister, if you remember.
Yes, and they were active in our lives, adding value.
And we didn't have social media then.
Yes.
But there was that cabinet chart.
You would, even in the newspapers, because I remember my grandpa used to actually buy newspapers every day. And I would sit and read. I was very young. But I would read, and even when they ask you in an SST class, who is the minister for this, you would know. But
there was
and the minister giving a statement was actually a statement of policy.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was also
like
civic
these days,
education.
sorry.
It is okay, Edgar.
Brother, you'll have to put up with. You'll have to. You live with me and Sarah. Sometimes we are friendly. Other times the sparks fly.
That's the nature of life.
I've given it. Now, when the minister spoke then, a policy statement, even if you are speaking off the cuff, usually, it indicated the direction of government and public policy. Nowadays,
you can't understand. You basically lose track. So, guys, if you're listening in, we actually want to open the phone lines early before we go into our focus for this conversation. Just your quick reactions and quick thoughts on these things, the deals we are having, the forest sale. On one hand, we are talking about conserving the environment. NEMA is very tough in Lubiji, evicting people from wetlands. On the other hand, we are having news that the ministers were actually cracking deals and selling a whole forest reserve, 1,280 acres. That's an obscene figure. Our numbers 0393-933-933, 0393-262-933, 0393-262-934. You could also reach us on 0393-266-933, 0701-933-934.
Hello.
There's already a caller on the line. Just give me a second.
Yes,
hello.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Thanks for the show.
You're welcome. May I know who is calling and where you're calling from?
You're talking to Record Michael live from SETA.
Yes, Michael from SETA.
Yes. The guest, Dr. Sarah, and the Edgar, welcome to the show. You know, our husband, Dr. Sarah, you know, you're the president talking tough, but you're the same. Now, really, we who are watching and listening, are we really going to take you serious? I've always told for listeners on this show, or maybe on Hot Seat, that if President Museveni wanted to end corruption, would have ended a long time ago. Today's talking tough because things are, all the institutions are dead. Dead. And if you said I stay in prison, you're going to stay there, which means his word does a lot of impact on fighting corruption. Forming of units each day is not going to help. We are just going to use taxpayers' money, and those people are going to enjoy money, but nothing is going to come out. So for me, it's President Museveni. He either also steps down, we get a new government, which is going to make Ugandans survive, because we are all dead. Actually, it's a pandemic, as Dr. Muhumuza said. But thanks for the show.
Thank you, Michael. Hello?
Yes, morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
May I know who I'm talking to?
Yeah, this is God William Everton.
Yes, God William, please proceed.
Yes. Thank you so much for the show, and I also concur with Sarah Bireete. The issue of corruption in this country is the pandemic, and it's true. And I remember there was one Ugandan who told me that nowadays cannot tune to TV and he cannot listen to radios because he knows what is already there. You see? He knows in the TV or the news will be about corruption, it will be about social matters. So that's the level now how Ugandans have given up. To me, I call Ugandans to act now.
Thank you, God William.
Atim.
Yes, good morning.
Your brother Bob said here.
Oh, Juma.
Yes.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for calling.
I'll give a high five to Sarah Bireete.
Oh, okay, high five, Sarah.
Thank you.
always my favorite. And that's how we see women and empowerment comes from. It's vocal and steady. But to me, issues of fighting corruption in Uganda, constitutions are many, the laws are many. Now we are confused. Which one can we follow? You go to judicial. Judicial will even give bail to a domestic victim. Those domestic violent victims, they are denied bail. But those ones who are picking those bulky billions in, let me say, embezzlement of government funds, 2 days, 24 hours, they are given bail. Now you are coming to convince the citizen that you are going to fight corruption. Bye.
Hey, Juma, bye. Thank you for calling. Hello? Hello? Okay, I think we can hold it there for now. If any other call comes through, we shall actually respond. So, Dr. Fred Muhumuza just walked in right now. Good morning, Doctor, and welcome to the show.
Morning, and morning our listeners out there. Quite a new setup here.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for new management and new ideas.
Good to have you. So my guests are now complete. Dr. Sarah Bireete, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, development consultant, is also director at the MUBS Economic Forum, and Edgar Tabaharo, who is a policy analyst as well as a partner at KTA Advocates. Now the conversation can begin. So Dr. Muhumuza, before you came in, our conversation today is focusing on regional matters, regional developments, but we thought we need to first start by looking at what's happening at home. And we're greeted by this front page news on both papers. Monitor is looking at House of Deals, how our parliament has basically been reduced from a legislative house to basically cracking deals at the expense of the taxpayer. And the Weekend Vision is telling us of a scandal involving a sale of forest reserve land by two ministers who, like Sarah says, they're actually currently in Chankwanzi, listening to a tough talk on corruption by the president, and yet we are seeing this investigation telling us about 6.4 billion shillings of money has actually been shared, or money has exchanged hands because they're selling this to Kira Motors, Kira Corporation, something. And we've just been getting views actually from the listeners about this, but we'd like to hear from you. What do you actually make of this? On one hand, we're having a tough talk on corruption. On the other hand, we're having basically we're riding one wave after another.
Well, I think, as they say, if the center can't hold, things fall apart, and you have symptoms to deal with. In the first place, a forest reserve would literally be, if government failed, it wants to use it for another purpose, you would have processes of degazetting it. Like, I think Namamve, 1998 was degazetted or something like that for an industrial park. Now, Kira Motors is a government agency, so I don't see why it should come to government to look for money to buy land that government could have given to them. If they felt they needed to change the usage of that forest from the environment to any other thing. But also, as we have known, sometimes there are uses of the forests that are eco-friendly. People have had eco-lodges and what, so we don't know what exactly Kira Motors may have wanted to use it for. It could have been that whatever plan they have will still maintain the environmental concern and the ecosystem. And of course, we know Kira Motors is in the business of electric buses or vehicles. That is their main thrust, much as they are still juggling with the others as well, which is also an environmental concern. So you want to first say, what is it that Kira Motors wanted to use it for? But that's the other side. This side is, why should government issue a supplementary budget to buy literally its own land? Because forest reserves are government land. That's where you really want to go and say what went wrong. Those are really complicated issues that you may want to say, did somebody connive to find a way of stealing money from government? Because we know very well, even if Kira Motors takes the land, the government still will have a right to cancel the title and get its land back. So you begin to see that this whole deal is possibly about that money, and somebody was looking at, how do I get this money out, which goes back to the center of the corruption. But for me, beyond the money, you begin to see that the corruption has now entered the policy debate. I always tell people, a gynecologist is supposed to save lives, but they can use their skill to perform abortions because they know how to keep the babies in, they will know how to get them out. So when you have the best brains you have deployed doing the antithesis of what they're supposed to do, the people you set out to catch criminals are actually learning from the criminals how to become criminals themselves or do criminality, then you have a real bad situation, and you are headed for a level where patchwork of the road is no longer the solution. Engineers reach a level where they say this road needs to be removed, let's grade off whatever little tarmac is there, let's redo the whole foundation. So what are the strategies of government on against corruption doing? And don't we need to overhaul the entire framework that has been in place to deal with corruption, rather than beginning to rely on that same framework to solve a problem that has gone so deep that it can no longer be managed through the existing laws and institutional frameworks?
Okay.
These are questions we should be asking.
Interesting. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we now look at the regional developments and how they actually impact us as a country. This is still VPN. Just stay with us.
Nothing.
Welcome back from the break. A very, very interesting conversation.
Why don't you take that conversation over there?
We're going to take that. Now we're moving on to regional matters and how they're actually impacting us. A lot has actually been happening across East Africa, from Kenya to South Sudan, Rwanda. So much is actually going on. Well, South Sudan marked 13 years of independence last week. In April 2024, the country announced it would begin preparations for parliamentary elections. So there are two things, independence, and now the country is going into elections, but that's going to be December. Well, this will be South Sudan's first since it attained independence. But this is elections for, it's not for the president, if I'm to get it right. Well, South Sudan has 10 states and 3 administrative areas. And if you know, South Sudan has always been in conflicts. 2018, we all know what happened. And because of that, the country has been under a transitional period, under a transitional government. So there was that conflict between Salva Kiir and his former deputy, Riek Machar, at the time. South Sudan is, just like other East African countries, is going through a lot of pressure. The economy is under so much pressure. The country no longer gets as much revenue from its crude oil exports. That is about it for South Sudan, but there's so much more still that's going on, but I'll stop at that for now. Rwanda, also our neighbor, goes to the polls on Monday. And after 30 years in power, it is widely thought President Paul Kagame will have a smooth sail into his 4th term. If you remember, in 2017, the results show that he won by about 99%. That is crazy.
He'll extend his tally to 101%.
well, they're saying this is
in their selection.
This is likely to be the same this time around. Well, maybe he'll get 100, maybe 99 point something. We don't know. And just next to Rwanda, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, continues to battle the M23 rebels who are fighting the Congolese forces in eastern DRC. Reports by the UN recently show that between 3,000 and 4,000 Rwandan forces are fighting alongside M23. Well, Rwanda says it is supporting M23 because the Congolese military recruited fighters who were among the perpetrators of the 1994
for a whole year
genocide.
and a half, they were denying.
Yes, until the UN
report brought pictorial evidence.
Yes, and they say, oh, well, these people have actually been recruiting people who perpetrated the genocide in 1994. That's why we support M23. That is crazy. Kenya, well, we all know. William Ruto, the president, fired his entire cabinet just a few days ago. All cabinet secretaries and the attorney general, but the prime cabinet secretary and the cabinet secretary for foreign affairs was spared. For weeks now, protests have rocked Kenya, led by mostly young people or the Gen Z. But why have they been protesting? Before the protests actually started, if you've been following news in Kenya, Kenya has been going through very tough economic times. And amidst all this, the Kenyan lawmakers went ahead to pass the finance bill, which sought to raise revenue to pay off Kenya's public debt. And it was imposing a raft of taxes on the citizens. And the citizens found this unpopular. It didn't sit well with them. And this gave birth to #RejectFinanceBill. You followed that. Later, the street protests led by Gen Z, and then later this was joined by all citizens. And Ruto succumbed to the pressure. And he said, well, I'm not signing the bill. And now, just days ago, he said, well, I'm disbanding the entire cabinet, and our government operations will continue under guidance of principal secretaries and other relevant officials. He says he's going to consult widely and set up a broad-based government. Now, the contentious issues, which are issues that we relate to, things we see here as well, the debt burden, limited job opportunities, wastage of taxpayers' money, unnecessary duplication of multiple government agencies. Just last week we were talking about the new State House body that was created to fight corruption in URA, when you already have an anti-corruption agency in State House. You have a health monitoring unit, but you also have a Ministry of Health. Just too many duplications, corruption. So how do you create a lean government? Well, that's what Ruto is focusing on, a lean government which is inexpensive, effective, and efficient.
There's an aspect you left out, the resignation of their head of police. Very critical. And the reason?
Yes.
Because of the violence meted out on the protesters.
Yes.
Me, I think that was the moment. That was the moment. He chose to step down rather than live with the guilt
and say,
the blood on his hand.
Yeah.
And his deputy also was not agreeable to the formations, and he was moved to the civil service. So the boss and the deputy are basically out over these protests. I think it's very critical for us, for any nascent democracy, to pick lessons from that.
What I take from you is the conscience, your conscience as a country, as a nation. I think Kenya has shown us that it actually is a country of conscience and people with conscience. Where's our national conscience? I think maybe let's start from that conversation. Let's start the conversation from there. Do we have a collective conscience as a nation?
We probably do, but what lessons do I pick from this? Kenya has a very deep history in protest, the protest movement. Right from the pre-independence period, during the colonial period. You remember the Mau Mau
Yes,
rebellion?
the
Mau Mau rebellion. You remember the Kapenguria trial? And all these were led by the elite. They were led by the elite. You remember 1969, the riots in Kisumu. Then you remember the so-called Second Liberation Movement. Second Liberation Movement, 1988, return from multi-party democracy. It was led by the elite of Kenya. Industrials like Ken Matiba, you had academics, professors, you had lawyers. You remember Paul Mwite, Sarah?
I do.
When Paul Mwite was president of the Law Society of Kenya. A very successful lawyer. He eventually represented, he was elected and represented, I think, Kikuyu constituency, formerly known as Kabete, the one that was represented by late Charles Njonjo prior to that. No, so whenever
he was also part of the panel in the last presidential
elections, but whenever Paul Mwite called for a press conference in Nairobi, Nairobi would shut down. This is a president of the Law Society, leading, these guys did participate in demonstrations. Late Dr. Richard Leakey, you remember him? Eventually forming Safina Party. So when you're talking about
C.J. William Mutunga,
William Mutunga was always in jail. But on this occasion, William Mutunga is representing the Gen-Z. He's offering pro bono services.
That's why it would be. He's always at police looking for arrested activists.
pro bono services. So, quite frankly, in Kenya, the deepening democracy, deepening rule of the law is not one that has been left to a clique of citizenry. It's widespread.
The elite on the front line.
They are on the front line, and they are not shy. They are not shy to push for reforms. So, and the feeling in the past, rather in the recent past, was that Gen Z were withdrawn from what? From the body politique. Now, that was a great miscalculation. If you look at the way the world is going, this Gen Z, I've said it before on other talk shows, not necessarily in this media house, that the Gen Z have more information than we had at their age.
Because of the digital technology,
big data,
yes.
And because they communicate through media that, and maybe Sarah
is tech savvy.
No, we are all tech savvy, but I mean,
in terms of social media
engagement, I do even attend her shows. She's hosted me on some of our shows, civic television,
yes.
where we've tested it out. So Gen Z communicate on TikTok, Snapchat.
Yes.
That's. Are you on Snapchat?
I am everywhere.
You're on TikTok as well?
I am tech savvy.
So the information they share there is incredible. These Gen Zs are much ahead of what we think of them. It's just that sometimes they appear withdrawn because, you know, our body politics here sometimes tends to be boring.
Yeah.
And their attention span is very low. Anything beyond 2 minutes, at most 5 minutes, they don't want. But when they take a stand, no, you're going to tax content. You're basically touching them. You're going to tax bread. You're basically, and for Kenya, Ruto only won with 248,000 votes.
Difference.
The country, you were there, you monitored the election.
Yes.
The country was evenly divided, and he won on the wave of populism. You know, with a country whose debt to GDP ratio is what, 61%?
I think 71.
How much is it, Dr. Muhumuza?
About 70.
70? Sorry,
Below, yeah, we have about 22.7 between 18 and 30.
30, yes.
50.5
Here in Uganda.
0 and 17.
Yes,
yeah.
But the GDP tax rate, rather than the debt to GDP ratio for Kenya.
That one is going to be a moving target.
It
depends on how you define the debt.
The debt. But it's really higher. It's and I don't know whether it's sustainable without taxation.
I don't track it because they use this indicator. So don't bother me.
I don't go to bother you on that. But you see,
mine is the cash. To what amount of revenue are you using
to finance
because that means the earlier thing she was discussing about, because debt takes first priority. So if the debt eats off whatever you picked from URA, you can't pay salaries and wages. It's not that you didn't budget for them, but you now have no cash.
By debt.
Whatever cash you had. So I track the liquidity indicators more than those static things that don't help any decision making.
So for Ruto, really, the balancing act was going to be very complicated for him, and he was not going to deliver very easily. So naturally, this content set in, and he mismanaged it at the beginning. I think he was dismissive of these young people. They appeared rudderless, they appeared clueless, and they appeared leaderless. In his mind,
no, he thought he was dealing with real hustlers who just want to hustle.
A movement, and he saw how casually even his minister for defense, cabinet secretary for defense, Duale, issuing an edict deploying the army. The army refused. They said there are procedures under the constitution
that should be followed.
So, and he took it to parliament, and it sailed through just like the bill sailed through. And the soldiers said, no. You remember they had already invaded parliament, occupied parliament, but these judges were not that violent.
No, they were not.
They just went and picked the mace, the mace, and they were being tear gassed. And surprise of all surprises, it's parliamentary security and workers who were giving them water to clear the tear gas. So they only carried the symbol of authority. And I really have to give it to those kids. Symbol of authority. There was a sniper.
This is our power. We gave you this power, and
but there was a sniper positioned on one of the rooftops who shot and killed some of the demonstrators. Now, that's why it went wrong. Believe me, after the ICC indictments on Musaura, Siang, Kosige, Ruto, and Uhuru, believe me, there's no Kenyan who is willing to sacrifice his life, career, and reputation to go to the Hague over that. Now, why am I emphasizing all this? There are lessons to pick. And whether we want it or not, it's going to be a wave in the whole of Africa. You remember the multi-party demonstrations of early 1990s, 90, 91, 92. And they led to fall of governments. Kaunda went. Who was this old man? John Hastings, Kamuzu Banda went. Mobutu was very lucky. Mobutu called for, because we're going to be talking about the DRC eventually. Mobutu called for a national conference. But being the master player he created many rival splitter parties within the parties. They had 103 parties at the end of the day. And he kept postponing. They failed to pay their bills, started picking up their bills, but eventually. But elsewhere in Benin, in Congo, Brazzaville,
Central Africa, West Africa,
the wave swept because that is the nature of dynamics of populations. And you see what is happening in Europe now. The right-wing parties are beginning to take charge, and all sitting governments in Europe look poised to lose. Same maybe for Germany, which has had really stable economy, stable, much as they had a bit of security threats when they took in, where are those refugees they took in?
Mostly from
Rwanda.
No, Middle East.
Middle East.
Not Jordan. What was it?
Afghanistan.
No. That was one of those Middle Eastern countries. I think. No, not Jordan. Which one country went up in flames?
I forget, but one of those Arab
But has in the Middle East all of it been in flames?
I know.
Why bother sort out between?
People tend to think when you talk of flames, it's Africa that only.
Edgar, what I pick from you is you're looking at what Kenya is right now is basically a product of its history.
Yes, history, yeah.
Yeah. So, Sarah, earlier you were talking about Uganda and also our history, and perhaps do you think that also explains why we're kind of lukewarm? We are not as aggressive.
We are not lukewarm.
No. If we are products of history, and if history repeats itself, that's actually what I want to find out. We've had 6 decades of coup. People coming into power through
The
use
force
of
of
the
arms.
force of arms and so on, and then it's always brutal. I mean, I hear stories from my aunties and my grandparents about how things were so bad during Amin's time. There's that generation that was actually really afraid, and they also passed that kind of fear to us, the millennials, which, thank God, the Gen Zs, our younger brothers, do not have. I'm actually grateful for that. And they don't. They completely don't relate, because when I talk about,
we
for
went
example,
to the bush, they can't relate.
they can't.
They wonder why a grown-up human being should go to the Jews. If not for tourism and leisure.
When I have conversations with people in their early 20s, and I tell them, guys, when we were growing up, oh my God, I was so scared of HIV because this is what I used to see. This is how people used to look like when they had, and they're like, really? You mean it was that bad? Oh, that was so sad. So they just, we're and I'm like, guys, they make me feel so old. Like, okay, I am a bit old, but not that old.
We are old.
I also feel when I hear stories of Amin, I'm like, oh my God.
Anybody above 30?
This is what these guys went through.
You are 27% of the population.
Yeah, the minority.
We are old. Yeah. So, but when you look at our history, does that explain why we are what we are?
You know, we have had a turbulent history. Of course, like you explain it, bullet democracy. I think when President Museveni came into power, he had a lot of goodwill from the people. The people wanted to give democracy a chance. I don't think any other leader will ever have
The kind of
such a goodwill that President Museveni has enjoyed from the people. People wanted to give democracy a chance. People wanted to give constitutionalism a chance. But people are losing their patience because there are limits. You promised the fundamental change that President Museveni proclaimed on the steps of Parliament was about peaceful handover of power. 38 years down the road, there is no show for that. He has destroyed the constitution and removed the safeguards for peaceful handover of power. The only safeguard remaining is in the Article 1 of the Constitution, free and fair elections. But do we have free and fair elections? We have never had free and fair elections in this country. The Supreme Court is on record 3 times for proclaiming that there are irregularities in our elections and the elections don't follow the laws. So we are yet to have free and fair elections. So many years of independence, we are yet to witness peaceful handover of power. And as a person who observes governance on a daily basis, because that's my full-time job,
You have a job.
yes. We are at a complete stalemate in terms of democratization. 1 year to elections, no civic education, no voter education. 1 year to elections, you have electoral commission telling you that they are now going to revise the roadmap and see what they can do. Every time we do LC elections, LC 1 and 2 elections, the last time we took 14 years to renew their mandate.
Now they've postponed.
Now
for
there
6
are
months.
several, the third postponement.
Yeah, the third.
So these are 18 months of postponement, meaning that we have failed to conform to the dictates of the Constitution.
No, but the interesting thing with the LC is they need 50 billion shillings to conduct elections, which is actually little money compared to the kind of money that will come in supplementaries for different agencies and entities.
There is just no commitment to democracy. It's not about money. So when you come to, those commitments to elections, in all our elections for the 28 years of the 1995 Constitution, we've never had a transparent national tally center. No Ugandan has ever seen elections as they come in for presidents, elections as they are tabulated, elections as they are announced. Electoral Commission sometimes postures and puts up screens. Those screens are always empty. In the last elections, Justice Byabakama was asked the sorts of things he was reading, and then he looked Tangazi, hey, you people, can you display what? Presidential elections are completely opaque. It is a sham. Even without reforms, I know that the Supreme Court ordered that every new parliament should discuss electoral reforms in the first 2 years of parliament. We are into a fourth year of parliament. There are no reforms to talk about. Even without reforms, the current legal framework can offer Ugandans a credible, free and fair election. But there is no commitment to democracy. All you will see is the army beating up opposition, the police disrupting opposition activities, and then a tally center that is full of police, prisons, and the army, as if it is a coup area, and announcement of elections that nobody can trace where they are coming from. Is that democracy?
Dr. Fred, I want to address this from the economic standpoint. Clearly, we are struggling financially and economically across the region. And when people don't have money in their pockets, they're angry. It's not easy to actually appease these kinds of people. South Sudan is struggling economically. Kenya, it's the same. Well, I don't know how Rwanda is for now. But what do this spell for us? These are our biggest trading partners. But what do these difficult times for our neighbors mean to our trade, investments, and so on?
Just to emphasize what you have said, Kenya is our biggest destination for exports. So whatever is happening there should be worrying anybody. We shouldn't just be talking about it as, this is where we sell the biggest. And then South Sudan and DRC. They are taking order. So whatever is happening to these two countries is a tough talk for us. The reason I was telling Dr. Sarah here that she has a job tracking governance and all the sorts of democracy. Clinton, way back in 1992, his campaign team says, this is economy stupid.
It's the economy stupid.
So whatever is in Kenya is economy stupid.
Economy stupid.
Whether you're going to pull out guns, tanks, tear gas, abuses, and
it doesn't address the
it's economy stupid, period. 1989, around 4th June, the Chinese rolled out tanks Tiananmen Square, and really dealt with the equivalent of the Gen Zs at the time. These were university students. They had been sent to the West.
You remember that unidentified student who stood in the front of the tank with a stone? Unidentified, he was crushed to.
These fellows had gone to the West and tested life. And so when China did that, I'm very sure the Chinese Communist Party sat and said, never again. And it hasn't happened again. This is the future.
They address the economy.
China is not going to fight its own citizens. Our mighty military is not about our own citizens. It's actually protecting them.
It's about livelihoods.
So why did they come to us? It's the economy.
Yeah.
China purposed to fix the economy. And they did. Whatever it took. And you are not going to hear that in China again. That party, Communist Party, I think is 60 million people. The entire China is over 1 billion. The billion is not bothered, because the 60 have made sure what the billion needs is going to be available. Even if it's not available, you see efforts that the government is mindful of the citizens and is trying to fix things for you. Is trying to do its best for you. People are not asking, give me my bread today, but can you give me a future? Now you have this 0 to 17. They are 50.5. You are talking about 23 million Ugandans who are below the age of 17. In another 10 years, they will be between 10 and 27. What will they be requiring, are we ready to give that to them? Now, if you don't turn up and say, it is the internet that gave them the knowledge. No, the internet is supposed to give them knowledge, and it will. But then, have you given them opportunities to use that knowledge? So until we fix the economy, we are not going to run away from this. We may have high levels of tolerance, we may have all sorts of things. Eventually, it crashes. The economy comes haunting you. Look at our Katonga Bridge. And the other day, I was just chatting with friends. I said, you guys, Mr. Museveni knows what it means to cut off bridges. The entire battle in Luwero was about bridges. You get to River Mayanja, you say, Obote can't cross there because there the river, this is the rainy season, it is full. They would have to come and pass here where the bridge is. Block that bridge and put an ambush there. The rest of the place you don't have to monitor because he had few men. So nature assisted him. So our Katonga is still in temporary phase.
Royal Triangle was basically about bridges.
It was about bridges. River Mayanja just cuts up that place. Why is Kyabazinga called Kyabazinga? Ebizinga is basically islands. So Busoga is an island territory. Sezibwa cuts here, we are talking about the corruption of the Bajo River. Nairo cuts here, then this one. So it's Ebizinga there. Now, a major bridge there, Sezibwa Bridge, has not been functional for a year for big trucks. This is your economy. These are the big trucks moving sugarcane. These are the big trucks moving, I don't know what else that is in that area. Now, that's a bridge already affected. Karuma. We are now headed for 6 months soon.
And they told us it was just going to be 6 months, and just recently they were still going to take another.
But even you're asking yourself, how did I get here? Karuma was built decades ago.
1960 something.
It's lifetime.
It's 63 years.
Lifetime.
It had expired, yeah.
Even
it's
if
beyond this, whatever celebrated.
Exactly. Now, who was watching that bridge? Because you know very well to fix a bridge is not an easy thing. And I personally participated with 2-3 other guys on the Nile Bridge. I know what we went through between the country and the Japanese to fix issues of the Nile Bridge.
Yeah.
How long did the negotiations take?
Now, negotiations really, the political negotiations, the economic negotiations, the engineering negotiations. And you are dealing with the Japanese, very structured fellows. Very methodical, non-corrupt. Don't clutter them with a shopping list of 17 items. We made sure every time we would go to Japan to talk about TICAD, Uganda has 4 items on that list. And I don't want to mention at one time some other ministers had come bringing their sectors. They had to be chased.
Oh, really?
Said no. We only expected 4 ministers in these sectors to accompany the president. You don't clutter and crowd that business. So when we went with our proposal of this is the bridge we need because UNRWA had designed a bridge, these guys clearly said, no, let's give it to the academia. Japan begins with the academia. It's a government project, but let's give it to the academia to crunch the numbers for us.
Yeah, industry, what they call it, what? University-industry linkages. University generating the knowledge, industry developing it to whatever.
So when they came back with our proposal, they had said, this is a bridge, the River Nile cuts Africa into 2, from where it begins. So the whole of the other side of Africa is not a Ugandan bridge. It's going to serve northern Tanzania.
Yeah. I mean, that's our gateway to the
Eastern Congo, South Sudan, all of them will be crossing there. And we are building a bridge for 100 years. So what will going to be the population, its demands, and economic activity for the next 100 years? Trust me, we didn't have those models to model the future. So when the academia came back, they said, okay, this is what we think the bridge should be. Now you begin to discuss with the UNRWA for acceptance and modifications and, adaptation. But they have given you a real template that you yourself, you're like, thank you very much. And at that point, it's a grant. Sijaika. You haven't gone even to borrow the money to build them because you don't know how much money you borrow. Now in Uganda, you see they borrow money and then say, hey, there was an overrun. How did you cost? The bill of quantities is supposed to be done first.
Yeah.
Now here we borrow money, then we go to access, right of access, then design. So what are you designing?
Then fail to dispense.
No, for a long time.
Design.
No, Fred is really taking this debate deeply, and I really like
this economy is stupid.
For a long time, absorption capacity of our loans was only 26%, and it had stagnated
because
at that
of these
level.
things. You're going to exactly what he's saying.
You don't know what you're borrowing for.
You borrow $50 million. You don't even have access to the road. You haven't designed the road, so you don't know what it is.
What are you borrowing for? You have 14 trillion dead.
And your population is growing.
Dead loans.
You are surely going to find the Gen Zs, and we should not blame them It is a way of managing the economy that is going to haunt us. We ourselves will fail. Because now even yourself, you have your business farm in northern Uganda and Waya. But you can't cross your maize to the south because Karuma is closed. What if the military wanted to deploy tanks to the north or to the south? You are also curtailed. So it's a security issue, it's an economic issue, it's an economy stupid.
Interesting point there. Let's take a break and then we'll come back and pick it up from economy. Welcome back from the break. This is still VPN here on 93.3 KFM. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host. We're discussing the political developments in the region and how they impact our domestic affairs here in Uganda. My guest, once again, Dr. Sarah Bireete. She's a lawyer and also the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Dr. Fred Muhumuza, Development Consultant. He's also the Director at MOVE's Economic Forum. Last but not least, Edgar Tabaharo, Policy Analyst, as well as a partner at KTA Advocates. Well, before we went into the break, Dr. Muhumuza was taking us through, the economic side of doing, how to balance basically the economics and the politics and development.
It's basically telling us the politics should be informed by the economy.
Yes,
full stop.
Yes, absolutely.
He's saying, look nowhere else.
Fix the economy.
Fix the economy. Everything else will...
Here we talk and do politics and forget the economy. Who decides where an industrial park should be? For heaven's sake, is an industrial park. You have not even asked the industrialists where they want to put an industry. You are running an advert to say any local government with land, UIA will buy it. So we put hands up, gives you 40 acres, you begin to develop an industrial park. For who?
Dr. Muhumuza, I have
an industrialist.
Industries,
we can't go
from
there.
senior 5 geography and economics, industries are determined by either location of the raw material or the market. Or we are in Jinja because we're looking for power. So the place for an industrial park in Uganda should be next to Karuma because there is power there. Then we can move the goods. Now you want to transmit power. There are technical losses in that power. Now the industrialists every time are telling me power outages.
Yes.
Because of those transmission, it's a heat area. Those transmission lines are exposed. Why didn't you put the industrial parks there? You save the millions of dollars that we are investing in energy transmission. You save the risks. The power line was hit by a butterfly, it fell down. There was a swamp, there was, I don't know. You save all those risks. Who is planning? As long as you are planning with your, like bats, heads upside down, that's why they move.
I'll give you a small example, Dr. Muhumuza. I have interest in the tea sector. I'm
doing research on the tea sector because the thing requires urgent attention.
I don't know that it's just urgent. It actually should be a national emergency. Yes. I come from a family, a tradition of tea planters in a place called Kijura near Fort Portal in Tabaharo district. We are third generation tea planters.
We are headed there in the next 2 weeks. And
I'll be gladly be your respondent. Your respondent. We've talked about tea. We've even written position papers on this. Simple, not that deeply informed by, say, academics like you, but looking at aspects of power, labor, supply, access to the markets, and how our choice markets have been affected by the scarcity of the dollars. Our choice markets being Pakistan, Egypt, Sudan, and all of them really
problem countries.
Problem countries. So we, I don't know how to put it. So we took into account particularly the issue of access to power and getting interventions, maybe even getting a subsidy, because we are ailing. But more than 3/4 of the factories have closed.
You should literally be an export processing zone because 80% of their products are exported. That's the criteria. So they qualify. But now you're putting an export processing zone in an industrial park in Wikwe. They are determined by soils. They can't move from Fort Portal.
I mean, exactly how you put it. Cabinet came with their position that we move the factories to industrial parks.
Can you imagine?
So you should move from Kabarole to
tea by its nature
has to be processed within 6 hours of being picked. If it's anything beyond 6 hours, quality.
So every tea
possible. Because you
my friend, let me tell you. First of all, the location of these tea bushes, the road network is completely broken down. And the roads, mind you, because I got the road to my small parish, my parish in Kamende sub-county. I got it, it's a community road.
Yes.
And because it's a community road, it doesn't get
funding and support.
But eventually, I go to the people, we wrote a petition, go to the council. It's the number elevated to a feeder road into
so
the
that you can
national
public resources.
So that you get access to Uganda Road Fund. No, but I mean, it's not for personal gain, really. But of course, at the end of the day, even if it were personal gain, it's for the
it's still for the community, and that tea still, the proceeds still trickle down.
Like Dr. Muhumuza is telling us, is the economy stupid? Let's fix it. Let me tell you, these young people. But I have a big conceptual disagreement with the way when we're rolling out the industrial parks. We are concentrating on the so-called heavy industry, not really even packaging, assembly plants.
No, it is about the land. The headline here. It's about who sold the land. Whether you ever build an industrial park or whether it works, me, I got my 5 million.
What we should be pushing for is cottage industry. Cottage.
Yes.
Cottage.
For a country with a population of 23 million, below 17,
cottage industry. It will absorb. Let me tell you, cottage industry doesn't need heavy capital outlay. This money that is being accessed from microfinance support center is enough to support our cottage industry and absorb hordes and hordes of young people into the monetary economy.
Surprisingly, this is senior 5 geography and economics. We just need to go back, snakes and ladders, and say, where did we get it wrong? Let that snake get us from 97 back to 11. Then a ladder will pick us from 20 to 77. Until we throw away all this thinking that is political, emotional, tribal. Forget it. The economy is stupid. Is still with us.
Okay, but when I come back to you, I think we'll need to talk about how do we get from economy stupid to economy smart. But that's for later. Let me come back to you, Edgar.
Sarah needs to first leave governance.
Let me get to Edgar, and then I think Sarah will actually respond. Edgar, earlier you were talking when you were talking about the history of Kenya and the history of protest that has actually shaped what Kenya is today.
Yes.
You were giving examples about the men and women who actually shaped the trajectory for Kenya's democracy.
Yes, they were the elite. They were wealthy people, very wealthy people.
So where do we find our own Willy Mutungas actually to come and also maybe, whether it's the Willy Mutungas of back then or the Willy Mutungas of today, who are they? Where do we find them?
Maybe we have equivalents of the Willy Mutungas of this world. Sarah Bireete could easily pass for a Willy Mutunga in terms of protest, not. But I think we in Uganda have also vulgarized our politics. That we also had such people in Kenya. Kenya had, you remember Lotodo? There was a guy called Lotodo. There was a guy called Ole Tip Tip. They had similar people like we have in this parliament, people who make statements and you're really wondering whether you belong to the same country and what have you. And when you look at parliament, honestly, over the time, and particularly with these exhibitions that have come through, we are quickly losing faith in our political elite, and I dare say even across the political divide. If you see the headline in your media house today,
House of Deals.
House of Deals. I was joking on some of our subgroups that maybe Parliament should be housed at Deals House in Nakawa. But also, when you talk of deals, I think I think it also has to do with the economy. Some of these people really go there for purposes of personal enrichment. In Kenya, yes, there's been a bit of personal enrichment, but their politics has been more for group interests than personal interests. In Uganda, we have three, I could say 3 or 4 overbearing personalities in our body politic. President Museveni, who is a larger-than-life figure. If you speak to his adherents, those who swear allegiance to him, I mean, they're very hardline and not very uncompromising. When you turn to the Vestige group, oh my God, he's also similar dynamics. Then when you come to Bobby Wine, cult leader proper, cultic cultic. Who would be the fourth, whatever? So, would be the fourth.
Do you are profiling?
I do my profiling. So when you throughout human history, throughout the epochs of human history, leadership emerges from every situation. You know, situations produce incredible leaders that sometimes are not known previously, even profiled. And I'll go a bit again in history. You remember how Binaisa, Lule, Muanga were not that highly profiled at Moshi. They were not even. They were actually. Binaisa never got accreditation.
They are not firebrand.
No, let me tell you the dynamics. The people who control. You know, you've heard of Kabwejiri. Kabwejiri was a big time contributor in the Kabwejiri conference. So Binaisa was denied accreditation. Nobody at that conference took him seriously. He was seen as from a priestly background, QC. He enjoyed, you know, good jokes, you know, bohemian lifestyle, enjoying his whiskey. Said, Lule was brought in just as, you know, they had no political affiliation. They were just other Lule and
observers, more or less observers.
But did Lule emerge as the first president?
Yeah.
Did Binaisa come in as a compromise president? Did eventually Muanga through a coup d'etat, which was orchestrated by them from somewhere else? I will not mention some of the things on the show. Of course, Muanga was doing the bidding for, you know, the person eventually handed over power to in December 1980.
And the transition
de facto
but you see, he was also behind the coup in 1985. Do you know Muanga was supposed to be thrown in and president? He came in to take oath of presidency. To his shock and consternation, he was relegated to the position of executive prime minister. You remember?
Yeah.
Yes.
But he only served for 2 months. Then Abraham Luwaligo emerges. So I'll also give example.
And people need to know executive prime minister is not like the current prime minister.
Current prime minister. He could appoint his own.
It's like the prime minister for Britain.
For Britain, or so you'd say Ethiopia.
Yeah.
So, and Zuma, President Zuma, was nowhere near the top echelons of leadership of the ANC.
Until he became deputy president. But he was a strong mobilizer.
He was even an ex-head of their military intelligence.
Yeah.
Zuma was a provincial minister in KwaZulu-Natal. The reason he was made deputy president
from
because ANC had been dominated by Kossas, the Kossas, depends on how you pronounce it. Mbeki is a Kossa, Mandela was a Kossa. So they needed a Zulu to come in and stabilize KwaZulu-Natal. You remember the run-up to the elections. KwaZulu-Natal was very problematic. So they asked Buthelezi to be deputy president, but on condition that he dissolves his Inkatha Freedom Party. He declined. He was made Home Affairs Minister, and that's how Zuma was brought in to strike a compromise with the what? With the Zulus. Zuma eventually became president.
Yes.
And he's still determining. So what am I trying to say? Is that leadership...
Imagine the situation will create.
Blend of circumstances. Create even people. You never know who's going to lead the talk of transition in Uganda. It could be somebody.
It might be a surprise.
It could even be an industrialist in
Actually, we need private sector to come in the economy.
No, you remember in Nigeria. In Nigeria,
we need economy.
Yes, we need the economies.
You remember when there was a power vacuum in Nigeria? When
Abiola.
When Abiola suddenly died and he had won the election. You remember the person for the 4 months, the interim president, Chief Ernest Sonekan. He was an industrialist, a lawyer industrialist, and the biggest. He owned the franchise for Pepsi Cola in Nigeria. Very wealthy person. He's the one who stabilized it a bit until the madman came in, Sani Abacha. But soon after Sani, when Abacha also suddenly died, General Abdasalam Abubakar took charge as interim president. And lo and behold, to everybody's shock, pleasant surprise, he organized a somewhat credible election. Of course, it had issues, but Nigeria has never looked back. Abdasalam handed over power to an elected, once military leader, Obasanjo, but now as a civilian one, and Nigeria has not looked back. So, what am I saying? That a leadership will emerge We just have to keep the hope alive.
And keep the conversation going. Sarah, I mean, from a legal standpoint, the law allows for protests. But every time we have organized protests in Uganda, we see the state actually being brutalizing citizens. And but protests are actually important for advancement of society, I believe. Do you agree or not?
No, I agree. And Article 29 of our Constitution allows for freedom to protest, freedom to demonstrate. And then that article should be regulated on how those freedoms are enjoyed. We have the Public Order Management Act. After the powerful and imposing Section 8 was struck out by the Constitutional Court,
that was
it is still the one that police has power to authorize.
Petition?
Origin was Mwanga Chivumbi petition of Article 23 of the Police Act, but it was reenacted in violation of Article 92, retrospective, you know, making a law to defeat a court judgment, and then the Constitutional Court struck it down again, which was obvious. But there is a stalemate at the appeal. The Attorney General wrote a notice of appeal. 4 years down the road, there is no memorandum, and then he wrote another letter also staying execution of the lower court judgment. So there's that stalemate.
So when is it wrong
I'm coming. So even with that Section 8, however unconstitutional it is, still citizens enjoy the right to protest, because that's only a regulation of how that right is enjoyed. But what happens when that right is exercised? We've seen murders, the latest being the November 18-19 Kampala massacre that is unaccounted for. Up to today, no single arrest. I know the government mentions 2-3 unknown names of people that were punished, but even after the BBC Eye documentary, we don't see those people in that video being punished. Beyond that, you have a citizenry that has now cowered down on their democratic governance rights because of fear. Fear has the first casualties of fear on the political front line in this country are the elite. Other than parliament cutting deals, the Uganda's elite are comfortable having 1 or 2, 3 business deals here and there, making money for their families, buying posh vehicles, genuinely and fairly and squarely, but closing the eyes on governance and leaving the country to go to the dogs because they can somehow survive. So whereas in Kenya we have the cream de la cream of private sector and elite taking frontline in governance issues, in Uganda it is almost the reverse. I'm not saying that there are no good people in governance, but the majority are not the cream de la cream like in Kenya. So you have this, opposites situation of the two countries, and it's no wonder that the democracy also in these countries is going in opposite directions. We see a mature democracy, although with challenges, because there is no perfect democracy anywhere in the world. We see Kenya maturing every day, making progress with a few setbacks. They recover, they reconvene, they overcome, they proceed. At least there is progress, be it electoral, be it fundamental rights and freedoms. And the difference with Kenya and Uganda is that the Kenyan constitution is alive. It has life. And that life is exercised on the streets. The people are able to put life, breathe life into the Kenyan constitution. And then the institutions are alive. There is a court in some county, I've forgotten the name, which sat on Sunday to set free the students that were caught in the Tuesday major protests that led to Parliament, Occupy Parliament. Court sat every day to make sure students are set free and they go back to sit their exams, including Sunday. The president, Kenya Law Society president, Faith Odhiambo, was at the front line of the protest.
She declined to be put on the audit committee.
You have all the agencies, civil society, everybody was like the parents of the Gen Zs in churches, on the TVs. They said, these are our children, these are their rights. Don't kill our children. Everybody was there. Some walked with their children. Others, everybody pushed back. In Uganda, can you see such a situation? We need Jesus Christ to come again.
Well, let's take a look at events now. Our other neighbors. Rwanda is heading to the polls on Monday, and all these accusations by the UN about Rwanda actually fighting alongside M23 rebels, being involved in destabilizing DRC. We are constructing roads in eastern DRC to aid trade.
Are we?
Well, that's why I say
That was part of the narrative.
Yes,
Did
sure.
we? That's the question. But money was allocated.
But DRC is at war, has it?
But did the
but
road
we
start?
allocated money for constructing roads, and at that time the Congress will, we need the roads, we need this amount of money.
We are petting.
Judy, let me just ask you a question. When did the media house last take pictures of earth movers doing work in that part of the country?
It's been a
I
while.
honestly don't remember.
They possibly was told.
I think it was still during the peace process before it collapsed. The East Africa peacekeeping troops in DRC.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
I hadn't started mine. I will not. I will not.
Okay, no problem.
I'll leave it to Sarah and the friend.
But okay, let's.
A man in my position. There are certain things I can't mouth off so easily without attracting bigger consequences. Not to self, but to the. Yes, Sarah knows very well. I've been subject of misuse between some of these countries. I don't want to escalate. The UN report, it's making it with evidence. So I'll, with respect.
No, well, I
Take a back seat of that
I totally
discussion.
understand. But now let's move away from the rather sensitive issues that, well, doesn't make people very comfortable. But let's talk about Rwanda generally and the elections, and I mean what this means for democracy, just for the country and regionally. If someone is going to win by already more than 90% of the votes, what message, what signal does this send to the neighbors, which are not Kenya? Let's exclude Kenya from this because totally we are in opposites. We're polar opposites when it comes to democracy and governance. But what signals do you think this sends to a country like Uganda and say South Sudan?
Well, we have elections in South Sudan and Kenya this year, and Tanzania being next year.
Yeah.
In terms of the Great Lakes region, Eastern Horn of Africa. South Sudan is coming from a stalemate of a peace process. A peace process has two key outputs or outcomes, one being the new constitution that has failed flat even after the extension of the mandate of the peace process, and now there is no document, there's nothing, the accord expired. You have an announcement by Electoral Commission of South Sudan that came out on 5th July declaring the parliamentary and presidential for December 22nd, and my Christmas is booked in Juba, consequently.
Well, that is if they don't even extend.
If they don't
it should have been
extend
last
again.
year, and then they extended.
Yeah.
Then even now, there's still questions. People are still doubting, will it actually hold in December,
So
or
just extend
shall
the
we see
Christmas
another?
as well. No problem.
So, but there is no constitution. The electoral laws have not been amended fully, although the commission is working, beginning to prepare elections with little funding. There is no civic and vote education, and as the East of and Horn of Africa Election Observers Network, we are trying to get going with our colleagues in South Sudan because we have a very active chapter there to try to fill the gaps of complementary civic education, which civil society should do. We hope that there will be no extension this time because there is a constitutional crisis. There is no accord holding. And then there is a need to establish a new order, a new legal order, because the other legal order expired. And there is a failure to make the constitution, and a failure to reintegrate the army. Sometimes the army wears party colors, parties of their faction, colors of their faction. And so it's a bit messy.
I told you have a job.
Yeah.
A serious one at that.
It's complicated. But when you go to Rwanda conducts silent elections. And I think Rwanda does not claim to be to be so much of a democracy like Uganda. I have never had any bragging rights about democracy in Rwanda. I think the bragging rights that I've had extend to a bit of infrastructure and in the urban areas and in the economy here and there. The Fred is here with us. But I've not heard of bragging rights about democracy. So I am not going to claim that, that it thrives, because I've not heard about it, neither from the people, the stakeholders in Rwanda. I think that's a conversation they don't claim to brag about.
It's very costly to have that conversation there.
I know, so we can't accuse them of telling lies. In my own, my own opinion is that Rwanda is a complete authoritarian regime that has no pretense about it. And elections are a bit of just a procedure.
Elections or selections?
Whatever it is, that's why I called them just a procedure to keep going. Yeah. So that's how I take it.
I won't say the other related word.
Yeah.
I think I know what you want to say.
Yeah, just a procedure to keep going, keep getting organized. We have not had, in contrast to the two previous presidential elections, this time round we have no arrest of a presidential candidate. It's the first time.
Even no killings, beheading.
Yes, so there is no that turbulence of arrests, of killings. So there is a bit of that artificial peace prevailing.
So back to South Sudan. Well, at 13 years of independence, how far do you think the country has come?
No, I think South Sudan proclaimed independence a bit prematurely. They were not ready. They've since joined the community, and their performance in the community is neither colorful. They owe the community.
Judy, there's a commentator who said that somebody asked what went wrong with South Sudan. Then a commentator said there was nothing that was right.
Yeah, I think they are yet to recover from the death of John Garang. That's how I can define
Cultic figures, larger than life figures. Exactly.
Yeah, they are yet to recover.
Big man syndrome, yeah.
So for me, really, Salva Kiir, his optics are similar to his conduct in the government. That's how I can politely put it.
Well, in terms of their contribution to the region, what do you think they bring on the table?
They've recently paid a bit of their debt. They are chairing the East African community. And is it surprising?
And I still remember the speech, the acceptance speech.
Where is
By the way, give them a bit of credit. They contributed to the East African Standby Force, the one that was deployed in the DRC before they were kicked out last year in December. Also, I told you circumstances always produce their leaders. Salva Kiir has been playing a mediation role in Khartoum. Seriously speaking.
Okay.
And you know very well that I'm very well I'm special envoy
for Khartoum.
Yeah, do you know why?
Paying out?
Because he was part of Sudan as well.
But is it
and he knows the players.
Is it paying out?
I think, by the way, honestly speaking, when he speaks to the elites in Khartoum, political elites, they have more confidence in Salva Kiir than all the other leaders.
Because he knows them.
He knows them very well.
Okay. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, sure. It's something that has not been in any discourse. Yeah. And you never see the Charles Onyango Boss.
I've just realized that I need to update my understanding of actually what the smaller things, the things that are not talked about in South Sudan.
Yes.
That's an assignment.
Okay. Sure. Thank you for that update. But I was saying that if you look at the East African community, now at a 8-member strength, Salva Kiir paid up some money before they assumed the chairmanship. Before that, they had a big debt. To the surprise of many people, Somalia came and then put 7.85 million on table and shocked everyone, and they all no money to the community. DRC, on the other hand, owes $14.7 million and is causing a stalemate the operations of the community. Kenya owes about $20. I think it was an oversight in transactions.
$20?
Yeah. $20. Uganda owes about $230.
30 what?
$1,000. The Burundi also next to Uganda. Yeah. The most update is Kenya and Tanzania, followed by Uganda, Burundi. Rwanda also owes a little money.
Rwanda is known to pay all its whatever.
No, it has
subscriptions to international
the
bodies.
last time we had
they use them for lobbying. Eh?
Yes,
Yeah.
but the last time we had our civil society summit last month. Every country owed some money except Somalia. Yeah, Kenya, I think it was just a matter of exchange because $20 is nothing.
It's really
Is nothing. But Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, all small money. Burundi, then the biggest chunk is South Sudan, and then DRC are the biggest defaulters. But the challenge with the East African community, economic issues, is the trade wars. The recent one being this oil, the cargo for Uganda, where a tax was slapped on, and it's good we have Fred here. I won't bother with the figures, but politically, what is surprising with that is the smuggled diesel on that cargo. As we start our oil monopoly, the Daily Monitor article was very clear. There was an accounted for cargo of diesel. So as this oil monopoly pushed for corruption, is it for a corruption entity? And you remember that joke on social media that when Ugandans are asking, whether the fuel pumps will increase or decrease, that they are just saying it increases. So can you tell us?
Did you see the tweet? Did you see the tweet of Doris Akol, former URS commissioner? And guess who she attacked him? Guess who she attacked him? Sarah Banage.
Yes. So that increases. We want clarity. The oil monopoly was pushed.
For me, Dr. Muhumuza, by the way, when you go into that space, when you go into the space of X,
you can spend the whole day. Why sometimes you can just sit
that's why I hardly go there.
Sitting on X is a job.
No, Dr. Muhumuza, it depends on whom you follow. Eh?
No, if you go at night, you'll sleep at 3 a.m.
No, the conversations there are good.
Very interesting.
People we thought were apolitical. Yes. I always give the example of Philip Karugaba.
Yes, oh my God, it's
Philip Karugaba. He taught many of us.
The new kid on the block.
He taught us. I mean, he's a first-class student.
Yes.
This is the son of Late Major Karugaba, the first Ugandan graduate of Sandhurst, a researcher,
top-notch consultant.
Oxford, what?
Elite of elites.
Elite of the elite grew up in Nakasoro, St. Mary's College.
Is now the new
the gloves are off.
He's
not going to court. The gloves are what? Are off. And believe me, that could be the Paul Witte of our times.
Yes. So as I conclude, I think UNOC must tell Ugandans the fuel monopoly was pushed on the condition that they will make fuel cheaper for Ugandans. We do not want to hear about that vagueness of creases. They must tell us whether the pumps are coming down or they are going to maintain them, and also they should explain the unexplained cargo on an
holding our leaders to account.
Now I think Sarah actually now dry takes it very, very well. I mean, the button shifts to Fred. Sarah has ended up with an economic issue. UNOC. The oil, the ship it's called what, Navigate something in the sea, and the amount that Kenya has slapped. Was this foreseen? Was it not planned? What do you think could have? I mean, you engage a lot in these spaces. What went wrong, or what went right?
You're going back to economy, stupid. Anybody who did economics in senior 5 would know that monopoly prices are always higher than when you have a competitive setup. Whether the middlemen were 3, they are likely to be better than the one that you bring in. Also, the allegation, and I will call it an allegation because I never saw the document, and most people have talked to. I said, who drafted this initial thing? They also said we didn't. We saw it out there. The allegation that prices were higher in Uganda because of those middlemen needed to be substantiated. And now that's what the reality that is coming through. Because you may easily work through dynamics and say, the Bireete international price is this. You haven't worked out the logistical costs of getting it to the pump price. But you're already promising people that now I am in charge, the pump price will go down. You have not talked to these middlemen what they go through to get the oil on the ground. And these are the realities now we are facing. That when it docks, they use... the pipe cost is there, the storage facilities costs are there. So I was really looking forward to say, what is it that UNOC is going to handle cheaply and translate into the pump price going down? I could not see that. All I saw was politics, a little bit of emotions.
Yeah.
There could have been facts I never got to see, but really,
that when they remove the middleman.
Yeah, the middleman. Because sometimes
the profit of the middleman, then the price.
Sometimes you blame a middleman. Between me and between Serena and me, when I go for my omelette, the eggs that are going to be charged, I'm going to be charged for an omelette of 10,000. Those eggs were literally like 600. So I can easily say there is a middleman here who is cheating us. But do you know what the middleman went through to bring you that omelette, including Serena itself, where you have parked your car, no charges, somebody is there guarding it, they are paying for electricity, they are paying for water, they are doing everything. So before you blame the middleman for adding something on the price, first check whether that middleman is actually not charging for a value that is out there or a service that is out there. So I will wait to see whether the pump price, I don't expect it to go down by any magnitude, because the oil price at the pump is also determined by many other factors that can't solve. The global price.
Actually, I've just seen a press release.
I saw the press release.
You've seen it as well.
But my worry...
They're saying what?
Well, they're explaining the 80,000 metric tons and
because
who is responsible. Yes.
But now you are walking into a dynamite territory, a landmine territory.
Let me share it with you, Sarah.
Okay.
Soon we might get to a situation until they resolve this. Remember, Uganda uses 7.5 million liters of oil products per day, meaning that chain must continuously flow. While some is in Mombasa, some should be crossing the border, some is at Total in Kampala, some is already at Karuma being distributed. $7.5 million must have seamless flow. Now, if this is not resolved, and remember, is now the only importer, the more time they take resolving it in Mombasa, you might actually see the pump price go up because of shortage of supply. And then they'll begin to give you those excuses. Something the private sector knew how to handle. We had said, people, there's going to be a learning phase here. Wasn't designed for importation of oil. It may not even have the people within the human resource who understand the logistics of getting oil from the other side to this side. Can you first get a learning curve? Don't put a ban and say, stop, monopoly now. Come in, participate in that market. As you are learning, you can compete and eat the market share of the others gradually with time. Give yourself a learning phase. Now we're in this situation, and I'm only hoping it won't trigger a crisis, that we shall begin to get to pump prices. And the oil is still sitting somewhere in between Malaba and Mombasa, and yet I need it somewhere in Kamocha, because that's where my Qatar has come on. My cars run out of fuel. These are dynamic areas. You don't want to tamper them as experiments because they are continuous. As I said, it's like breathing. You cannot say, oxygen is finished, I'll resume to breathe later on. It must flow continuously. And I'm looking at that space.
Thank you very much. Let's take a break, and then we'll continue with the conversation later. And also in the next segment, we'll open our phone lines once again. Do stay tuned. Welcome back from the break. This is still VPN here at 93.3 KFM. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host, and I have with me very interesting guests having very interesting conversations.
On and off air.
Even on air, not just off air, on air as well. Dr. Sarah Bireete, she's a lawyer. She's also the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Dr. Fred Muhumuza, a development consultant. He's also the director at the Muhumuza Economic Forum. And Mr. Edgar Tabaharo, who is a policy analyst and also a partner at KTA Advocates. We're still looking at regional developments and their implications on us, on Uganda's development, whether it's in the political or economic front. Well, we had now moved to, of course, looking at regional issues. And, Doctor, you were still talking about the economic decisions we make and how they end up costing us in the long run.
Sometimes people debate two polarities, and they forget in between those two polarities is the reality. They say, you are an optimist? You are a pessimist? But in between is the realist. Suspension of LC1 elections. What were we supposed to do? You have no money. And their tenure is ending. Do you let them go and there is no administration at that lower level? You reach the reality and say, the only option I have, extend that tenure. Now, because you don't have the money, And we're also now going to begin hunting for money for 2026. We are going to borrow to have an election. The same reality we've done at LC1 maybe would work, but this time don't say extend, because this parliament is being questioned. Not that the LC1s are not being questioned themselves. This parliament is being questioned. There's a time for us who grew up farming when you say let's reach a season and let that land be under fallow. Don't plant anything there.
Give it time.
So can we have a phase of no parliament?
It rejuvenates.
No whatever source of political leadership. Leave it to follow. We shall continue. Because we'll still have the technical people do their work. The doctors will still be in Mlago, and they will have more money to treat the sick. The interns will be paid. The road works will still have more money because the district engineer, all he needs is his grader, fuel, and his salary. And we have structures that can get that to them. So we are going to reach that phase where we say, between the rock and the hard place, what do we do? And the economy should be the prime selection and priority, because you must secure your economy. I have told people, whenever there is war, the first thing people will attack is your economy. America will put sanctions on Russia, on Iran, on all these kinds, to break the economic power, so that eventually they will break their military and political power to change, the politics to change. So you don't want anything that breaks your economic power to be let to continue. Start with the economy. How do you secure that economy? These fellows we are talking about, the younger fellows, are going to be asking for one thing. Can I have food? Can I have rent? Can I have an opportunity to do an economic activity for survival? The ones 17 and below are still asking their parents. In 10 years, they will be asking themselves, where is an economic opportunity for me to do X, Y, and Z? And remember, they also have life demands on them. I usually sometimes listen to Luganda songs. This girl is really tasking the boy. Or the man, and these are
why are you sleeping on the job?
Why are you sleeping on the job? We have dated for 5 years or 2 years or 3 years.
We don't see.
Why don't you take me in? But the boy is like, I'm still sleeping in that dingy place. I can't take a wife there. And is it a problem of love? They have their love. They are committed to one another, but the economic condition has driven them to that level. Now, pity the other one who took her in. They already have a kid.
Oh.
Now, that one is even a more worse off situation.
Yeah.
Now, these are your Gen Zs.
Yeah.
They are really asking for basics, which basics can't be answered by politics, can't be answered by governance, but the economy. But as long as politics and governance are disrupting economic processes, they too will be wiped out.
Yeah.
And that's where Kenya is. These Gen Zs are coming from an economic problem. We have a socio-economic issue that can easily become a political issue, a security issue, and you don't address it that way. As I said, the Chinese went back, fixed the economy. For the last 40 years, the Chinese economy was doubling every 8 years. Now, Mr. Museveni has said, I want the Ugandan economy to grow tenfold. From 53 billion, where we are today, dollars,
For 30 years.
to 500 billion by 2040.
China's economy grew by double digit. The longest sustained economic growth recorded in human history.
Double digit of 14%, 10 to 14%. Now, for Uganda to grow from 53 to 500 billion in 15 years, we need to grow by 15.5% starting this financial year. The projection for this financial year is 6%. So we are already off the mark. Can we bring that reality in? It's not being a pessimist or an optimist. It's being a realistic. You can't grow this economy. And remember, every time you want to invest, this population is asking for basics.
Yeah.
Can I go to school and find a teacher? Because that's what a 0 to 17 year does.
You cannot meet them even at that basic.
That's what a 0 to 17 year is doing right now. Going to school, find that school. We're still committing less than 100 shillings to a primary school kid per day. That doesn't give them the education that they will need to engage the Japanese,
The skill,
Yeah.
the
to
skill
engage
set,
the
yeah.
Chinese, the Tanzanian, or
To engage in the global economy.
global economy.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're asking for that basic. They want to have food. They don't know about your own meal. They just want food. I'm hungry, mommy, I need food. They want to sleep. A decent place.
Yeah, they are sick. They want to go
They
to
want to get treated. They are not. They haven't asked you to take a man on the moon, or a plane, or a car. I'm asking for food, decent accommodation, security,
education.
Basic
Health care.
Basic. But their numbers will cripple your budget, and now you have allowed 46% of your budget to go to debt. So it's not even speaking to these young people. First of all, it's speaking to debt service.
But doctor,
And
do you think
have a budget?
Do you think we are also getting it wrong when we actually encourage for a bigger population, like, oh, people should actually have as many kids as you can? Are we getting it wrong there?
Of course you are getting it wrong. Part of China's journey was the one-child policy. And even when they changed and said, now you can have many children, the Chinese know what one child means to a family's welfare. They have refused. They have failed.
Yeah. They're giving incentives to young girls.
They are big savers.
Please start having kids. We'll give you this amount of money.
China. So you have poor people here who don't even have anything to save. You should be encouraging them. But I'm like, well, if government says big families are okay, let's engage the families themselves to know that a smaller family is good enough for them. I keep telling my students at university, if you produce a third child in this era, I will be worried. One child is enough to prove you're not sterile. Clinton had one child.
And you can have continuity.
If you add a second one, it is fine. We no longer have risks. The children, we immunize them, we guarantee their growth. And even their growth is guaranteed by you having fewer and looking after them.
We even have to abandon some of these that, you know.
You must have a boy. By the
Sarah,
way.
you know I have girls for children. And
it doesn't make you less.
You can give birth to a boy and the boy turns out to be a Joseph Coach.
God forbid.
So, God forbid.
And it starts with you. We have seen our children are killing their parents. Give me my inheritance. So for me, it's engaging the population and the household to say, look at your resources. How do you want to proceed as a household, as a family?
What matters is the equality.
So, Kenya, Ruto is, well, what people think, what analysts think is Kenya might be headed for another national unity government.
That's what Ruto has announced.
He has announced it already.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the pressure he had with
12 minutes
with Kalonzo, Raila. Surprisingly, Martha Karua was not in that meeting.
She made a tweet. She said previous dialogues have not benefited the ordinary people. They have only ended in the political leaders sharing posts in government. She wants something different.
And how I wish along with that they also agree no elections for 10 years.
Could we see something like this in Uganda? Would it work?
So I am of the view that Ruto is still a winner, although with challenges. A political leader
he has a mandate of
listening to people and acting to the needs of the people is victory. It is not a weakness
for me.
Not just humility.
It's
not just humility. It is a mark of deepening democracy for a country as a people, not just Ruto.
Yes. So Ruto for me is still a winner, and the Gen Zs are still winners. Their demands are being met, and the leader is answering to the needs of the people. What remains to be seen is how do they move forward for the betterment of Kenya and Kenyans.
The Kenyans, I know,
so
find a way.
The 150-man dialogue that Ruto has called for, I wish it takes their job serious. Look at the demands from the people, both from the 2022 Mandamo, the protests and the Gen Zs, and address the gaps where it comes to the people. The other victory for Kenya is that the constitution is being protected by the people.
Absolutely.
For me, they are on top of their game.
Edgar, well, do you think we could actually have something like this work in Uganda?
You know, you can't predict the future with exactitude. You can only set scenarios. Engage in scenario settings, ifs and whens. There are two events that for me impacted on how I intend to see Uganda going forward. One, the EFRIS protests. You know, they were not like they just closed their shop. But it's also a form of protest. That's a form of protest. That's civil and it is okay. It is accepted by the constitution. Protest, by the way, is legitimate. Even opposition is legitimate. We don't all have to belong to the same thinking. And I must emphasize this before I go into the discussion I wanted to have. Politicians at all occasions, at all material times, should dialogue. They should have both formal and informal channels of dialogue, and they should be kept open. Also, politicians the world over engage in horse trading. I know the word horse trading in some circles sounds a little colloquial, but it's about give or take.
Consensus building. Know when to take.
Consensus can only be built through dialogue, and through consensus can we have harmony, and through harmony can we have a sustainable political future for this country. So two aspects: that protest by the traders from Kikugu, and they booed Museveni. And President Museveni said, for the first time he made reference to his mortality. Said, people, I'm 80. I'm soon joining God in heaven. I'm soon going to heaven. You must plan for what? Your country. You must what? Plan for your country. And I think that's what Dr. Muhumuza is basically telling us here. That, guys, our economy just ain't working for us. Let us start planning for our country. Guys, whether we want it or not, we are building a storm. We are building a storm that we may not be able to handle if and when we don't address it.
And if we don't build it, it is building itself.
Two, when he invited the ghetto to Kololo, you remember? You know, I'd never seen President Museveni lose his cool in public. You remember the words he used? Shut up! Shut up! You know. Now, guys, whether we want it or not, the ghetto is coming to the fore. The table is coming to our boardrooms.
We have 4 minutes to wind up.
The ghetto is coming to our boardrooms, whether we want it or not.
But they're already there.
Believe me, whether we want it or not, as we head to 2026, the ghetto is going to be.
Buchaman is a presidential advisor.
Leave those. Let us leave out the tokenism.
Okay.
As a movement, the ghetto, 29% of Uganda's population is urban. Is urban. Yeah. When I was growing up in the 90s, I attended secondary school between 1990 and 1996 at Amiago College. Uganda's urban population was only 11.5%. It has more than doubled. The ghetto is coming to our boardrooms. The ghetto is going to be part and parcel of our body politic. If we don't do things right, the things will do us.
Sarah, let's just wind up and call it a day.
Democracy belongs to the people, and that's its basic definition. The people should take back their power in whatever spaces they are in, be it private sector, be it governance like myself, be it, you know, the youth, wherever they are. The people of Uganda should reclaim their power and make sure that governance answers to their needs, wishes, and demands. That's the only time we are going to have stability and progress in Uganda.
Dr. Muhumuza, let's hear from you and we just wrap it up.
And I think to avoid wrath from the people, let's just address the needs of the people. Not their wants. Wants can be wants. That's true. I want
the wants can be greedy.
Yes, exactly. Let's, as we prepare for the people, let's address the needs of the people.
Basic infrastructure, roads, power, health, you know.
You're talking about roads. We have an integrated roads program, and I think it's scenario-based planning.
But Kampala is now a huge slab.
We need scenarios in the event of this.
In the event of this,
some flexibilities. That community road, upgrade it to
national feeder road.
Feeder road. It can get resources. It's about the people. Don't tell me there's a tarmac road from Karamoja to Kabale. I live 7 kilometers off that tarmac road. There is a culvert in my village that is broken. I can't get my melon to that tarmac road, which is that feeder road. Can we address the needs? They haven't asked you for tarmac, electricity, your transmission, no. Food, they want accommodation, medical, education, and security. Mr. Museveni has given security.
That is performed very well.
You cannot
on security has performed very well.
The others are not
today. The impact on the former.
Thank you very much, Edgar Tabaharo, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, Dr. Sarah Bireete. Thank you very much for your insights on this show, and to you guys out there for your phone calls earlier. Sorry, we ran out of time and we couldn't open our phone lines right now, but we do hope you'll join us next Saturday and have your thoughts shared with us. This is VPN. We've been looking at the regional political developments in East Africa and how they impact our home affairs. Thank you very much to my panelists and to you who's been listening. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend.